The day is in the midst of a year-long look at affordable housing in the region. What specifically do you think the legislature should do to help people who can't afford to buy a home or are struggling to rent an apartment?
Having affordable housing is important for the community and the society we live in. I think legislators can look at help support communities by improving the infrastructure to help them support affordable housing. There's, if we can help these towns, we can help the folks that are looking for affordable housing.
Connecticut recently enacted a law designed to provide safeguards against lawsuits for out-of-state patients seeking abortions in Connecticut and any provider who helps them. Do you support efforts to make Connecticut such a safe haven?
Absolutely. This is women's right that we're dealing with, and I'm afraid, very afraid, that if we lose this right, we lose other rights. We need to do more in Connecticut, but we need to do more on the federal level as well. We have, the first thing they teach you in a law school that federal law trumps state law. So on the federal level, if they introduce laws, it will trump our laws here in Connecticut. But I support that, but we need to make sure that we're supporting federal laws as well.
Okay, next question. The state's surplus has grown to over $4 billion. Do you support the decision to use some of that to lower the state's pension debt? Or do you think more should be returned to the taxpayer?
The pension debt is a commitment we made, and we need to live up to it. And I do support paying down the pension debt. Part of it is, it's a debt for our children and grandchildren. And if we leave it there, it's going to continue to grow and get worse. We need to pay our pension debt. But we need to also look at ways at growing our tax base in terms of companies, bringing companies into Connecticut and businesses into Connecticut, so we can grow our tax base and lower the burden of taxes on our residents.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. How should Connecticut move forward to address climate change with regards to electric vehicles, wind power, and other clean energy strategies?
Some of those are federal regulations, by the way. Windmills in the middle of the ocean is not something the state can control, but we can control renewable energy onshore, and we need to do more incentives for homeowners to own and purchase renewable energy like solar. We need to invest more in electric vehicle infrastructure, and we need to incentivize electric vehicle purchasing in Connecticut. It's important that we invest more in our environment, and we should look into ways to recycle more in Connecticut. We have there's many resources that we can look towards investing in reducing our plastic waste, or reducing our the trucking that we use to move products. So if we can move product into a greater scale and break them down into their final destination, and rather than transporting them with their packaging and plastics, we can invest more into greener ways for Connecticut.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. Do you think the 2020 election was conducted fairly and Joe Biden won? And then as a follow-up to that, do you support early voting and voting by mail initiatives?
I do believe 2020 was won fairly and Joe Biden won. And I'm surprised that there are people out there that don't believe that. And yes, I do support early voting. And I think we're one of 6 states that doesn't have early voting. And we should have, people who don't feel comfortable. The pandemic taught us a lot of lessons. People don't feel comfortable being in big gatherings. Some sick people don't feel comfortable going and standing in line, or sometimes they have to choose between standing in line and voting or putting food on their table. Early voting allows them to do that. It's a great honor. It's a great privilege to have that right to vote as an American, and it should be honored and celebrated and afforded to people who cannot have the opportunity to go and stand in line because they have a job that they cannot miss, or they have a daycare, they have to make that appointment. It's easy for people who don't have these concerns to not hear or believe those concerns, but those concerns do exist, and we need to make it easier for everybody to vote because every vote matters.
Okay, thank you. All right, and last question, and this one will be specific to the 18th District. So I wondered if I could ask, how do you think the growth at Electric Boat will impact the region? And how, as a legislator, would you help the region prepare for that growth and an influx of employees in a way that benefits both the employees and the residents who currently live here?
So I was actually last night with Congressman Courtney, and we were this was a topic of conversation. He's done a tremendous work on the federal level to ensure that Electric Boat stays in Connecticut and grows in Connecticut. And now we are manufacturing 2 subs a year. We need to continue that work of Congressman Courtney and support him. And we need to do more here, to ensure that we have the right resources in terms of infrastructure and in terms of mass transit and in terms of housing affordability to make sure that we have the talent we need. I was driving down here this morning hearing an ad for Electric Boat they're looking for employees. Their starting wage is $20 an hour. It's a good starting wage. And we need to help them find more employees and help them find more talent to come and work and live in southeastern Connecticut. And that's by focusing on affordable housing, by focusing on mass transit, by focusing on good schools, because that's what people look for when they're moving into an area. They look for good schools, they look for easy transportation, they look for healthy environment for their families, for their children. So we can do more on the state level to offer those things the employer, Electric Boat, can find the talent to come and help them grow more. And we need to support Congressman Courtney in his efforts. He's been a fighter for our area, and we need to be partners with him.